Hi again then guys, and welcome to another instalment of Leash the Beast, the series where we take vehicles which are typically known for being more challenging than many people would like, or maybe just straight up difficult to drive. Cars like the Stratos, the Spira, the Selena 7, the Nismo LM car, and various others. And in this particular pick we're featuring a car which has pretty much always had a reputation for being difficult to drive, right back as far as Gran Turismo 2, and this has always been one of the quickest cars on Gran Turismo and one of my favourites, up until GT6. On GT6, for some reason, the speed has just really dropped dramatically, but that aside, there are people, myself included, who still like to use the Speed 12 as a track car, but maybe don't necessarily think it's the ideal option, to say the least. It typically has a tendency to spin up its wheels, which given the amount of power and torque isn't surprising, and also has surprisingly heavy steering. You'd expect it to be probably the exact opposite, but it's actually a extremely heavily understeering car. So, we've basically set out to solve that. And for any who are new to this series, the best way I believe of doing so is to fully tune a car to its maximum potential. If you can make the car perform well with the most power and torque that it has to cope with, and on tyres that technically aren't up to the challenge, then anything less than that is bound to be easier, and that is definitely the case with this car. So I've gone for sport softs, which certainly aren't bad tyres, but at the same time aren't exactly the kind of tyres you'd want to be running 1100 horsepower through. For the suspension, which is paramount to these builds, the suspension and diff is the most important thing overall. We've got the ride height on 60, front and rear. You can go even lower than that if you want, or higher. The springs have increased to 14 and 11. The dampers we've left on 3. We've reduced the anti-roll on 1. The camber and tow we've got neutral, perhaps surprisingly on a car with so much power. As with all of these Leash the Beast builds, the gearbox and power settings don't matter at all. You don't need to copy what I've done there. All I've done is given it a rounded off setting. That really doesn't matter, just build it to whatever you need. As far as the diff, which is very important for this, we've got the lowest initial torque, the highest acceleration, and the highest braking sensitivity. All the power upgrades of course, but as with the gearbox, just build it to whatever level you need. And as far as the weight, we've got that as low as possible, and the downforce as high as possible. So that's it overall for the tune for the car, and as I said, primarily the most important things are the diff and the suspension. So now let's take it out to the Nuremberg Ring to see if we've improved the car. Now overall, on sport soft tyres, this car will of course always have a tendency to spin up those tyres. Tuning is not magic. You can't make cars drive absolutely perfectly. And to be honest, it's a good thing that you can't, because if you could, all the cars would end up feeling the same. So having a car's character remain intact, I think is an important thing, because it means that some cars are better than others. And in the case of the Speed 12, I like to think of this car kind of as a modern muscle car, in one very specific way, and that is that people underestimate it. Muscle cars are not the kind of cars that most people think of for track racing. In fact, they're probably the last thing that people would think of. The Speed 12 is similar. Everyone thinks of it as a straight line machine. Hardly anyone uses it as a track car, especially in higher PP levels. So, if you can tune a car like that to be amazing as a track car, in other words, add good handling to its repertoire of insane power, ultra lightweight, etc., you could theoretically have a devastatingly effective vehicle. And essentially that's what we've done with this car. Now the handling is not perfect. I'm not claiming that. It's not perfect with any of the tunes in this series. But what we have done is we've loosened up that steering so that you can actually turn for a change, even at higher speeds, and we've given the car more of a looseness that allows you to really control where you want the car to be, rather than just putting your foot down and hoping for the best. Now the sheer power that this car has means that, of course, it's going to go a bit too fast for its own good sometimes, but on the right track, that can be a good advantage. The Le Mans, for instance, it's a devastatingly effective car for that, and if you build this for a lower PP, I guarantee you'll win races with it. So, if you do decide to use this Leash the Beast build, for the Speed 12, which is one of my favourite cars, then obviously I hope you find it fun and definitely competitive at multiple PP levels. And if you'd like to keep up with other builds like this in the future and various other tunes as well, be sure to slap subscribe down below for that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.